Hi everyone, welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. Thank you so kindly for joining us. You all look fabulous. Well done. That was a pitiful clap for your own good lookingness, so I would really encourage you to do it. You're good looking, and you should know that. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson. No relation to our author this evening. Unfortunately, not related to our author this evening. But I'm the event manager at Green Apple Books on the Park here, and tonight I am very, very happy to welcome you to celebrate Lauren C. Johnson's release. Keep it going for Lauren Johnson. Lauren is joined tonight by writers Tara Campbell and Beth Winegarner. Let's give a hand for Tara and Beth. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to let you know, too, that this event tonight is presented in proud partnership with The Ruby. The Ruby, if you are unfamiliar, is a collective of Bay Area non-binary, trans, feminine, and women-identified creatives who have a desire to learn, curiosity, and a range of interests, and who continually seek enrichment. There is plenty more that I could say about The Ruby and the fabulous Peggy Lee, who is here. Peggy Lee of The Ruby. Thank you so much, Peggy. But Lauren is a member of The Ruby, and we get to be collaborators for this evening, as we have many times. Our great community partners, The Ruby, thank you so much. And thank you to all the Ruby members who are here this evening to celebrate. We appreciate you. I have very brief business before I move on to the finest of the hour, if you will. Now's a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. I would encourage you to do so. While you're doing that, I will say there is so much to imbibe that it would be a real shame if you had none of it. So please do have some, and everyone's homework is to finish anything that is open. So that is on all of you, and I'm gonna check at the end of the night that you did your homework. So please do that. Authors, how do we feel about photo taking? Yes, please. Okay, no bad photos allowed. Don't do that. Only good photos here. Please do check out our full event calendar online at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event you are at right now. I can guarantee this is the only goth prom that we have on the calendar, though. So, well done, everybody, for coming to goth prom. And I would like to be asked to dance later, if anybody's up for it. Please do, if you are able, buy books. Please do buy books from us, your hosts for the evening, an independent bookstore in San Francisco. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the writers who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you are able, we always appreciate it. We have books by all three of the authors joining us tonight at the front register. You can find them there. I have a feeling they would be happy to sign them. So yeah, cool, they are. They'll do it. Neat. So a little bit about how this evening is going to work. We're going to hear work from all three of the writers who are joining us. They're going to have a little round robin at the end of that. We'll open up for audience Q&A, and then I'll have a signing line, and then you can mix and mingle and be. Does that sound good?
Good, yeah.
Great, yay! I'm very happy to introduce the first writer this evening. Tara Campbell is a writer, teacher, Kimbilio Fellow, and fiction co-editor at Barrel House. She teaches flash and speculative fiction and is the author of 2 novels, 2 hybrid collections, and 2 short story collections, as well as a chapbook of sestinas. Additional publication credits include Master's Review, Electric Literature, Craft Literary, many others, as well as Escape Pod, Artemis, Rising. Let's give one more hand for Tara Campbell. All right.
right. Wow, the MC is about my height, which barely ever happens. So this is really convenient. Thank you so much for coming out, and thank you, Lauren, for inviting me to be part of this splendiferous celebration. I'm going to read a little excerpt from my book, City of Dancing Gargoyles. You can already tell why we're friends. And yeah, this is an excerpt from the beginning to give you an idea of what is going on here. What is the point of a creature created for rain when there is no more rain? Do you remember, M asks, shoving another clawful of sand away, and I say yes, without even needing to ask what. I remember them well, the days when we didn't have to dig, when water came to us. With the next sweep of his claw, M uncovers a fat black beetle. I snatch it up and carefully bite off half before placing the rest into his mouth. We roll the tiny burst of vitality on our tongues until every last molecule of liquid seeps into our stone, then exhale the rest in twin puffs of iridescent dust. Refreshed, I begin digging again. We used to just, he gestures with his front paws, miming the torrents of rainwater we would simply allow to pass through us. I know, I say, now also imagining a storm, water first trickling, then gushing down through my body, then the skies opening up with so much rain, water wells up behind me and overflows, spilling down my sides and over my head, soaking in. Back then, we would stay damp for hours after the rain stopped. We actually welcomed the sun, craving its warmth after a downpour, back before basking became baking. M pokes a claw into a divot in the sand and pulls up another beetle. He gives it to me to bite in half. My eyesight is keener, my tongue nimbler, my teeth sharper, and he trusts me. When we were still up on the church tower, I was around the corner from him, protected from the worst of the sun and sand-blasting wind, so I've retained more of my original features. M's hearing, however, is still keen, and he is the one who had the visions, a foretaste of the crumbling, the falling, the long, dry future before us. More than a century ago, he began foretelling these dusty days of want, and because I trust him too, we prepared, looking out from our perches to the north and the west, planning where we might go. We were among the lucky ones, carved with complete sets of limbs. We were able to move around after the abandoned church finally fell. Granted, on the ground I'm not as graceful as I might have looked coiled around a rabbit high up on the parapet. For whatever reason, my sculptor added 4 stumpy legs to my long, sinuous shape. M's sculptor had more sense, endowing his powerful lion's body with wings large enough to lift him, and, conveniently, me as well. I'm light enough to carry, but M's also getting weaker. For the moment, we're surviving together. But up there on the wall, I couldn't have imagined how bad things would get, how deprivation would really look and feel, how thirst could hollow out an already hollow being. The wind shifts a dusting of sand onto our heads from the lip of the hole. I look up and am startled at how deep we've dug. We've been so intent on following the trail of beetles. We'd better go, I say. M nods in agreement. If the sand shifts and traps us, I doubt anyone would be strong enough to dig us out, if they even came to look for us. M jumps and unfurls his wings, careful not to touch the sides of the hole. He pumps for lift while I wind myself up his leg in our practiced manner. This time I don't bother to coil around his whole body to distribute my weight, because we're only flying far enough to make sure we don't get buried. We touch down and begin the trek back to the church. This also is new. We used to fly back. He would glide easily, wings outstretched over scraggly creosote and spindly mesquite, far above dusty earth before it completely dried out, while I scouted out sources of moisture below. It was easy at first. We weren't selective, didn't care whether a trickle of water was muddy or clear, whether an animal was alive or dead. If carrion was too far gone, we could at least consume moisture from the flies or their offspring. Now a maggot would be a plump luxury. A stream would seem an ocean. And so we walk, because even as brittle and light as I've become, I want M to conserve his strength. As though reading my mind, he asks, "Today? Let's talk after we rest." We trudge back toward the remnants of the church. Those who remain have developed the custom of spreading out to forage in the morning, then returning to the shade of what little still stands in the hottest hours of the afternoon. We settle in among the other gargoyles and does, never quite sleeping. We were all fearful of resting at first, afraid we would succumb to exhaustion and desiccation and simply cease. But we've discovered that rest is helpful, that we can close our eyes and pretend we're back in the time of rain. Opening our eyes to the early evening with its break in heat is a small gift every day. This time, when I open my eyes, I look around at the others. "I don't see Vlad," I murmur. "Or Beatrix," M says. "Or Winsome," adds another gargoyle who's overheard us. "It's been days." M and I look at each other. We excuse ourselves for the evening forage. "No story today?" Quasi asks, turning expectantly toward M. "Maybe later." He barely looks at her before heading for the exit. M and I begin scanning for dimples in the sand almost as soon as we step out through the broken arch of the church door. It's much too close to find anything, but it's habit. "Tonight?" he asks softly as we head away from the grunts of stirring gargoyles. I sigh. With a nod, I answer him. "Tonight." Thank you.
Thank you. One more hand for Tara Campbell. Joining us all the way from Washington State. Tara Campbell. Wild. The gargoyles are worth it. What can we say? I'm excited to introduce our next reader. Beth Winegarner is a... Yay! You'll have another opportunity to clap. Beth Winegarner is a journalist and writer who's contributed to the New York Times, New Yorker, The Guardian, and many other outlets. She is the author of several books, most recently, and one of my favorites, San Francisco's Forgotten Cemeteries, A Buried History. She is also the co-host of the Dead Reckoning podcast. Let's give one more hand for Beth Winegarner.
Small people. Thank you all for being here, and I'm really excited to celebrate Lauren tonight. One of the cemeteries I write about in my book, if you're familiar with the Lincoln Park Golf Course and the Legion of Honor, has 10 to 20,000 graves still unmarked in that place. And I seem to still be writing about them. So this is a poem that I wrote relatively recently. And if you want to find out more about the cemetery, Dead Reckoning's first season 2 episode just came out, and it's all about it. So this is called Grave Goods City Cemetery. And there's a little intro. In 1993, hundreds of graves from San Francisco City Cemetery were exhumed during the expansion of the Legion of Honor Museum. These people's remains were reinterred in Colma, but their belongings were collected and cataloged before being archived by the Chinese Historical Society of America, which is also in San Francisco. Okay. The person in grave number 503 was buried with 2 silver hoop earrings fashioned in a floral motif, looped through a light green jade ring. Jade for purity, wisdom, longevity, and virtue. 2 pale jade bracelets, too, and a pair of frog closures at the throat that probably once fastened a cheapao, fabric and flesh and breath long gone. In grave 164, an artist perhaps. Paintbrush, eyeglasses, red threads, fragments of glass and brass, a pipe and a pair of shoes, and fragments of metal, a ring with leather straps, clasps, a buckle, things that once swished and dipped, clinked and clattered, all now silent. In 287, artist or scientist, buried with a pencil, a glass disc painted crimson, a scrap of glassy obsidian flaked on both sides, a chunk of blue clay. Also, one bullet fired, resting in the area of the departed's left ribs. Engraved number 418, a handgun, likely unrelated to the person in 287. Number 514 was found with a glass nursing bottle and a stopper or nipple protector, and the remains of a pillow and a leather-bound book. Were the bottle and book for the same person? Or were parent and infant buried together? The answers may live in another volume, or only in the minds of the long dead. Graves 509 and 510 are twinned. In 509, a trio of decorative ornaments, no further description. In 510, an animal skull, but which animal? Plus 2 more frog closures, probably from 509. The person in 522 received a bountiful send-off, a coin in the mouth, silk from a hat or pillow, a green glass ring from Peking, 2 jade bracelets, a bamboo vial, a Chinese stoneware vessel, and an opium pipe and needle to prick the drug before feeding. Perpetual wealth, eternal painlessness. And then various offerings hinting at deeper ritual, deeper reverence. In 158, a rosary and 2 crosses of bronze or brass. Burnt twigs and seeds on the coffin lids of 539 and 594. More seeds and a lump of clay in the throat of 702. Prayers to the gods, the skies, the powers that make new life from seeds, the grief that sticks like clay in the throat. Thanks.
One more hand for Beth Winegarner. Thank you, Beth. Okay, our featured reader among featured readers. I'm very happy to share. Okay, I had like a personal thing I was going to share, but I didn't really prepare it. But I'll be brief because it would be very boring and about me, and I'm gonna just keep it brief. Lauren, I'm really happy to be in literary community with you. I'm so excited that we get to celebrate your book tonight, and you're an outstanding person. And look at all the love in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, without further ado, Lauren C. Johnson attributes her upbringing in Florida, America's weirdest state, to her interest in the ecological and surreal. She earned her MFA in creative writing at American University and lives in San Francisco, where she is a co-host of Babylon Salon. I thought that would get a reaction. A quarterly Bay Area reading series, and Club Chicxulub. Appropriate. A sci-fi and fantasy performance series. The West Facade is her debut novel, and the reason we are here tonight. Let's give one more hand for Lauren C. Johnson.
Wow, thank you all so much for being here. Everybody looks so beautiful. Thank you so much for celebrating my book with me. Thank you so much, Tara and Beth. Your words were incredible. It was amazing to hear you read that just now. All right, so what you need to know. It is 1348. The bubonic plague is reaching France. The statue of Saint Genevieve, or Saint Geneviève, has been guarding the Notre Dame Cathedral for about 100 years. She's one of the statues on the West Facade. And she's pretty bored. So, as one would be if they were standing in the same place for 100 years. So, I'm going to drop us into her story, and then because the first chapter is pretty long, I'm also going to skip around a little bit. Chapter 1. Feast Day of Saint Geneviève, January 1348. The girl came to me at vespers, drunk, with a mouth full of grief. Her breath warmed my cheek as she squeezed next to me in my door jamb. I was so accustomed to the cold that her body heat startled me. She smelled like the almond cakes the bakers like to sell in the parvis, and beneath that, her stale breath. Her lips brushed my ear, and she dropped a gift into my outstretched hands. It rolled along. Oh, is the mic on?
Just went out.
It just went out. Ooh. Uh-oh. All right. I did see the books moving during Beth's reading.
That's totally what it was.
I love this. All right, we're going to roll with this.
The ghosts are out for you.
Yes, love it. Okay. It rolled along the edges of my fingertips, warm and sticky, before it settled against my palms. Saint Geneviève, I need help, she said through chattering teeth. Snow flurries rose around her head and caught the waning light. She gripped my shoulders. From this height, she could not touch the ground with her boots, but if she fell, she would not break bones. Reaching my niche would have been a troublesome climb, but certainly not impossible for someone limber like this young woman. Though I could easily see and hear anyone who approached the cathedral, I stood too high up for most to touch without a stepladder. The girl had a round face, round eyes, and a woman's voice. Still adolescent, 18 years at most. Her body shook, and her voice was a pressured whisper, a flurry of prayers. Her tears dampened my face and rolled towards the corners of my mouth. My parents are missing. Let them be alive. She bit her lip so hard, I thought she would bleed. She spat words about a merchant ship that had landed in a port called Messina, steered entirely by dead sailors. The ship carried illness in its cargo, and now people were dying throughout the south. She'd had family in Messina. She'd heard the illness had claimed both parents and her eldest sister. Saint Geneviève, I ask you to intercede. Protect my family. Let them live. But if you can't, if it's too late, at least let me speak to the dead. She squeezed the soft thing she'd placed in my hands. Oh, Geneviève, I know it's wrong. I should never ask for such things. I couldn't reassure her. I was not really Saint Geneviève. I wasn't a saint at all. I was just a statue that stood outside the entrance to the Notre Dame de Paris. I tried to listen, but I got lost in the sensation of her touch and hot breath on my face. So rare was it to feel warm arms embrace me. I wanted to taste her tears so badly, if only one would fall between my parted lips. I had always loved the feeling of being touched and tended to. Once or twice a year, artisans from the Masons Guild repainted the cathedral's west facade where I stood. Though no one had ever held a mirror to me, I knew how I looked. I could see the colors of the artisans' brushes, and Bathsheba, my favorite companion, told me herself, as if she were my mirror. I was given orange hair that curled around my face, brown eyes and pink lips. I had round cheeks and round eyes. Every statue had childlike eyes and an expressive mouth. These exaggerated features helped the people see our faces high up in the architecture. The masons painted my arms, hands, and face beige. My chemise, coat, and mantle were humble gray. I hated gray, so dull and solemn, but I had long learned to accept it. Some artisans had a gentle, steady hand, and some were hurried and careless. I could tell a lot about a person from their touch. And beneath that paint, I was limestone, porous enough to absorb light, heat, scent, and sound. I was all seams of bone-colored rock. I was soft-bodied, chalky, and old, older than the hunched men playing trick-track in the Parvis, older than the Avignon Papacy, older than Paris, older than the Ile de la Cité. The girl stood, and I could see her well. Her brows were dark and straight, and her black hair hung past her shoulders. I knew her face, didn't I? This was the same girl who had placed candles beneath my alcove on Noel. On La Toussaint, she stared at me with lips moving silently in prayer. I'd seen her before that, too, on the feast of Saint Michel. She looked up at me and smiled. Now here she was again, with blood droplets beading her hands like gems, and as she sucked her palms, I felt that old longing. What did blood taste like? What did it feel like to bleed? The girl suddenly sprinted across the parvis while the monks shouted at her. She elbowed her way through crowds milling around the hot wine and sweet stalls, bumping into a fashionable woman with a horn silk headpiece. The woman stumbled and cursed the girl, who barely glanced backwards to apologize. I would have laughed if I could. I kept my curious gaze on the demoiselle's back until she slipped into an alley beyond Rue Neuve Notre Dame. Then I remembered the soft thing the girl had placed in my hands. The gift was a citrus, a bitter cooking fruit. I absorbed its smell through porous stone, and I felt its weight settle in my palms, a delicacy as precious as a pouch of silk, of spice from across the sea. The girl hadn't gone inside to pray. She hadn't left candles at any of the altars, nor had she sung with the congregation. Instead, she had reached for the patron saint of Paris, what she believed was Saint Genevieve, and she had meant for me, and me alone, to hold her offering. I didn't know how to help her speak with the dead. I didn't know how to summon the bird she asked for. I only knew I wanted to press my fingertips into the fruit's skin and mark its flesh. I wanted to press it against my nose and mouth and inhale its acrid scent. This was an organic thing, a thing that could be eaten. Eventually the parvis emptied, and I inhaled as a mortal would. It always felt so good to breathe, to welcome cold air between my teeth and let it fill my body. Old flecks of paint peeled from the corners of my mouth, and I could move my hands and feet once again. Folds of the sculpted mantle draped across my shoulders softened, and I sighed as I turned my head. Smoky, charred wood smells drifted from the houses and mingled with the scent of cart horses and manure. A breeze blew across the Seine, stinking of the tanneries, the unmistakable cow urine and quicklime. But I loved it all. This was Paris, fecund, alive. Skipping ahead. All too soon, we heard the familiar sound of wings strike the air. It was the somber gargoyle, flying from the east to west facades to warn every companion guardian of dawn. The gargoyle never descended and never spoke to us. Gargoyles were solitary guardians. It was said that they spoke only to each other when they spoke at all. From my position in the door jamb, I could only see shadows cut the sky and the slightest suggestion of wings. If I didn't know better, I would have thought I'd only seen a raven or a crow, but I did know better. Soon we would hear bells and music swell within the cathedral for prime and spill into the streets beyond the parvis. No one watched me. I couldn't resist any longer. I turned over the fruit and peeled back its flesh. My fingers pushed open Isabel's offering and pulled soft insides apart. What if I was more to Isabel than just another object on the cathedral wall? What if she could see beneath the paint and the figure I represented down to my seams? I felt sorry for destroying her offering, but not sorry enough. I closed my eyes and brought the fruit to my lips, concealed behind my hands. The tartness stung, and I delighted in my teeth and tongue as the sky turned pale. Juice filled my mouth and dripped down my chin. I bit and I chewed and I bit and I swallowed and I chewed and I bit and I ate, and I felt delirious. Bells rang from every side of Paris, from the church of Saint Severin on Rive Gauche to the church of Saint Gervais on Rive Droite. A booming, joyful response echoed here on the Ile de la Cité, or simply the city, as the people called it, and as we guardians called it too, from the bell towers of Notre Dame and Sainte-Chapelle. As the sky turned pink, my limbs stiffened, and my body returned to the form I was carved into. I was Saint Genevieve again, a statue whose placid gaze promised peace and prosperity, rigid in limestone with generous upturned hands. My palms forced open. My fingers released the torn remains. I did not know if I had broken the enchantment or if I would wake with the next new moon. I did not know if I had doomed Isabel. My mouth twisted into its carved smile as the peel fell. Thank you.
We have one more hand for Lauren Johnson. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our three panelists here and have them talk amongst themselves.
Yeah, we sure hit it close. Okay.
And, yeah, if it can't face the speaker. All right, you're good, yeah. Turn away.
You can also scoot a little bit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is it my vibe?
This place is, I don't know, maybe something to go
It's
today.
haunted.
Yeah.
So I really love reading your book, but of course, it made me really wonder about your first visit to Notre Dame and what that experience was like for you and how it may have inspired this book. I also wonder, are any of these statues still there?
We lost a mic just
cut
down on the
On the feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great question. So the first answer, first time I saw Notre Dame, really spent time with it was in college and study abroad semester. And our class got to visit Paris, which was incredible privilege, and tour Notre Dame. And really what struck me was the statues themselves. First, the gargoyles. I love gargoyles. Tara, we love gargoyles. Who doesn't? But I would say that the statues on the west facade of the cathedral, representing various biblical scenes, to me, they kind of frighten me a little bit. And I think that's the point. I think that they are deliberately, in addition to trying to tell stories, they're trying to kind of warn people, like, come here or else. So I found them so expressive and so kind of imposing, especially if you go in through the doorways of Notre Dame, you look up into the arches, you'll see these faces just kind of bearing down on you. And I think, the other readers, I'm sort of drawn to things and exploring things that scare me a little bit. And statues are definitely one of those things. So I began to wonder, what if these statues were alive? What would they think about? What would their dynamics be like? What kind of inner politics would they have? And I'm sure they would have lots of gossip and a lot of drama. So what would that look like? And I kind of kept that idea in the back burner and kind of played around with it a little bit, but didn't really do much with it because I didn't really know how to. And then later in my MFA program at American University, which is where I met Tara, the story evolved into the book that later became Now, through a series of workshops and discussing it. But it was definitely a process to turn it from idea to actual characters. And you asked us, are any of the statues there now? The gargoyles are. A lot of the original statues that you will see on the west facade of the cathedral are not the original ones, which were destroyed during the first French Revolution. So that was also part of the reasons why I wanted to include a prologue and epilogue to kind of account for that. Yeah. All right, so I have a couple of questions for Tara and Beth. And, kind of on this note, something I noticed about our work is that we do some time traveling. Beth, recent past of San Francisco, with the cemeteries and with your poetry and also some of your wonderful speculative fiction as well too. And Tara also time travels in the past as well, but this City of Dancing Gargoyles takes place way in the distant future. And so I love that we're playing with time here. And so I was curious for both of you, what was one unexpected challenge with writing about a different time, and then one unexpected pleasure? And I'm really curious about the pleasure.
I think one challenge was that the Pacific Northwest is not as doomed as I needed it to be in terms of ocean rise, because the tectonic plates interplay with the rising sea levels, and we may actually be even in less danger depending on what happens with the shifting of the plates. And so I was like, dang it, I needed this to flood, but okay. And that's part of how I wound up extending my range of my story down into California so I could take advantage of that lovely calamity. And then one of the pleasures was that I didn't feel the need to create just one calamity facing us in the future, because I feel like it's going to be this general sort of, like we're living through now, right? This toxic brew of like environmental and social and economic, and I'm hoping somebody else can like lift the mood after I'm done with this question. But so yeah, one of the pleasures was being able to imagine alchemical testing as after effects as part of this toxic brew, and not have to have it be the main thing, but just one of the things that people will be dealing with in the future, just like we're dealing with multiple things. Well, and in your book, it's the plague and the statues, interpersonal relationships, and the spell, so it's all of these things together. And I kind of found that there was a freedom in having those multiple modalities of challenge facing the characters.
Since my book was nonfiction, and I came into it by way of discovering a lot of newspaper archives that had information in them that I wanted to tell as a nonfiction book. There was a lot of information available to me, but one of the tricks of San Francisco is that a lot of our records were destroyed in the 1906 earthquake. So, for example, cemetery maps or some of the lists of who was buried where are completely gone. And there are good researchers who try to rebuild those things now. But there were definitely holes in the stories that I wanted to tell, and that was a specific challenge. And the other part, I think, maybe not too challenging, but something I wanted to be careful with was just making sure that I was being respectful with the people whose stories I was trying to tell, because they didn't necessarily ask me to tell their stories. So I felt like I was walking a fine line, kind of assuming that they would not want to be forgotten. But that was also one of the pleasures, was getting to learn the history through the people who are buried here, learn the history of the city itself, and all of the things that we still live with today: class divide, fighting over land, rich guys doing whatever they want. It was all in there, and it was like, oh, this is how San Francisco got to be how it is. Lauren, do you want to answer your own question?
Yeah.
Well, Beth, I've reading your work, reading your book, and listening to your podcast, I feel that you have been very respectful, and that's something that's really I noted immediately with your work, and definitely unexpected challenge. I don't think this was unexpected, but writing into France in the 1400s when I don't speak French, it says my access to the archives was limited. I ran into a lot of trouble researching in the beginning, and that was expected challenge. But an unexpected pleasure was just how over the past several years, more and more medievalists, so this is if anyone else is writing medieval fiction, there's a lot of information now online. A lot of medievalists have been putting their work into podcasts, medievalist.net, the 5-Minute Medievalist. There's so many content creators out there who are sharing their work, and they're not, I shouldn't just call them content creators, but who are medievalists and academics who are sharing this knowledge. And there's so much out there, and I did feel that, like, man, I wish when I first started writing this, like, I had access to this, or like, Beth, oh my gosh, I wish your podcast had existed when Dead Reckoning, especially when trying to write into the bubonic plague, because I think there is so much that we could learn from San Francisco's own history as well, to pull into that work and to imagine the past. And so that kind of leads me to the next question. I found that the three of us we're kind of drawn to, I feel like, kind of spooky things, cemeteries and funerary furniture, as you've talked about at length in your podcast, and Tara with gargoyles, and you have this book, Cabinet of Wrath, about like creepy dolls. So, and I wore a bracelet with like creepy doll faces just for Tara. But I do think you're onto something in that, leaning into the macabre. There's something in there that goes along to what you were saying, Beth, that it could teach us something about how are we better members of the communities that we're part of. So I was wondering if, either of you could speak to that.
Would you like to start this time? Change things up a little bit?
My head went to about 10 different places in that question, even though I was expecting it. There are plenty of different cultural ways of working with the dead. Not everyone creates monuments that are carved in stone. And in fact, not all of the people of San Francisco were marked with stone. That's why so many of them are unmarked now. I like to think of stone as a very good technology because it lasts a long time. And if you want someone to be remembered, putting something in stone on their grave is a good way to mark it and mark that they were here and they existed. And so I think it gives us an opportunity to reflect on who was here before us. One of the things that is important in my book is that it's about the people who built the city of San Francisco, but are in unmarked places now, and we don't know who they were. But it leaves open that possibility for imagining, or looking through headstones in other cemeteries and wondering about those lives, because I don't know, it's something I find fascinating for sure. Yeah.
That was such a dignified answer, and mine is not at all. I think for me, it's about fairness in a way, which is something my editor, we shared the same editor at the same press, and my editor picked up on this theme of fairness in my book. And I find that these beings, these unknowable, unpredictable, creepy ass beings, be they possessed dolls or gargoyles, are kind of harbingers of fairness through wrath. Because there's so much that isn't fair in our world today. And so for me, having these more powerful, more awesome, in that original sense of the word, being able to play with these creatures lets me imagine, what if there were consequences for people who aren't being fair? What would that look like? That would be kind of awesome to be that person, is like put myself in the body of that creature that could perhaps enact some of this, radical fairness engineering, if we could call it that, or wrath. And so I think that it's kind of, in a weird way, it comes from a sense of fairness and outrage that things are not fair so often, and thinking about what it might be to be able to affect that calculus a little bit.
Yeah, so I started writing the West Facade well before COVID. And I think as we entered COVID, and I was writing into the bubonic plague, I think that this book provided kind of an outlet for me to channel my own sort of anxieties about what was happening around me. So I would open up my laptop. I would write before work. I'd open up my laptop, then at the end of the day, close my laptop and start writing again, and just kind of, I did a lot of just like dumping writing, just free writing, which eventually became some of those chapters. And I think this is a tangent, but I think beneath Paris, bubonic plague, age Paris, you'll find San Francisco. I really drew a lot of my experience living in the inner sunset here into those scenes, and really just, I was like, okay, I can empathize with what people were going through. Something one of the characters says, who has made very much a point of taking people in and helping, is that when we abandon each other, King Death, which was a colloquialism for what people were calling the plague at the time. She says King Death wins. And so I think that goes back to something we often say is that we take care of each other. I think that's something we're all really holding on to now as we are just in a world that feels scarier and scarier by the day, that we cannot abandon each other, and that our communities are everything. And so on that note, thank you for being here, like truly. I think we're gonna open to Q&A now. I'm looking at Carr, and Carr's giving me the thumbs up. If anybody has a question. I see Mari.
Good reading to everybody, first off. Lauren, so I was wondering, there was a fire in Notre Dame 5, 6, 7 years ago, and since you were working on this book before then, I'm wondering if anything, what went through your head and did it change the course of the book?
That's a great question. First of all, I remember that day. I was at work, and a couple of people texted me, and one of my good friends was like, Lauren, Notre Dame is on fire. And then one of my grad school, it was Stephanie Grant, emailed me and said, are you watching the news? And yeah, I was wondering what would happen. Everyone was wondering what would happen to this cathedral, this landmark. I've always viewed the cathedral as a place of, I'm more intrigued with it from the secular perspective, from the cultural perspective, as a non-religious person myself, just the history of this building. But it was that history and that cultural significance that I think made the breath just catch in everybody's throats. Did it influence the book? It made it more, it encouraged me to keep working on it. I think that I was at a point where I was kind of floundering through some of the chapters. I mean, Tara, you heard me talk about this book we were talking about it at a bus stop one time on the way back from school. And it was kind of like, I was in this process of like, where am I going to go with this book? And that, I think after that kind of encouraged me that, no, I should keep writing about this. This is something that people will care about. People will care about the statuaries, the art, and what if they were alive? So maybe their stories deserve to be told. See a hand.
Hi, this is your first novel published. Is it the first one you've written, and do you have any more in the works after this?
Oh, sorry. I will repeat the question again. I forgot to repeat Mari's question first, which was about how the fire in 2019 might have influenced the book. And then this question is this is my first published novel. Is it the only novel I've written, and will I write, do I have another one in the works? This is the first novel I've tried to write, and I think that's maybe why it took me so long, is that I was teaching myself how to write a book, which is, as anyone knows who's written a book, a lot of people are authors in here, so you all know you have to really train your brain and do some weird mental gymnastics and to write a novel. So this is the first novel I've written. And I do have plans for more work. Right now I'm working on a collection of short stories that take place in Florida, my home state. But in terms of other books, I'm sure I will tackle the novel again, but right now I'm so excited to get back to short fiction. Yeah, Matt.
I noticed that materials are a big shared theme in your works. There's a great image about the clay in the throat, there's the sand coming through the talons, of course the limestone. I'm wondering what materials you're drawn to as writers and what you're sort of repelled by in our modern world.
All right, I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to pass the mic to someone else to answer that first. The question that Matt asked was about materials that we all three of us seem to be drawn to these materials like clay, limestone. What are we drawn to and what are we repelled by? Did I get that? Okay, cool. All right.
That's an interesting question. I'm just thinking about I was going to say I don't like anything sticky, but the podcast sometimes gets a little sticky. So, fair warning. I don't know. I like anything that's sensory in the sense of like, you know, earth or plants or flowers or, I mean, are birds a material? I don't know.
Birds are material.
Birds are material. She's the expert. Living with two birds. Yeah. I don't know that I would necessarily be drawn to writing about things like plastic or anything too artificial. Now I'm thinking of the new Wuthering Heights movie and all the weird costumes. But yeah, I think there's a lot to say for describing our world through the textures and the actual feel of things against our bodies.
Okay. I think part of the reason I concentrate on materials and tactiles because I'm so bad at writing scenes, like place, and I have to sort of go from the inside out and work my way out to the environment, as opposed to folks who can say, you know, this valley and this river and X number of miles and whatever. I don't even know. What am I smelling right now? You know, that's what I can kind of get into. And I think in keeping with the gargoyles and, you know, sort of the fascination of the grotesque, I find myself writing something that I would personally hesitate to touch. Just fascinated by what's that like? What would that be like? And I also find that I like to describe things as from a non-human perspective, because we're like way too centered in everything we do. So I think that's kind of how I like to approach materials as well.
Oh, that's a great question. I really have to think about this. With limestone, I feel, well, I believe in my book that I really tried to make limestone really focus on it as an organic, once living, fossilized thing. So the aliveness within limestone and within stone and focusing on those as organic materials. Yeah, I am drawn to writing about bodies. I don't mind writing about gross things. There are gross things in this book. The being alive, animals, I love writing from the perspective of animals and about animals. So very much the organic sensory world. And maybe not so much, yeah, I agree about plastic. And then also, I work in tech as my day job, but I don't really like to write about it in fiction that much. Yeah. So probably, yeah, technology, maybe not so much. Let's see, another question. I see, yes.
I think I wanted to comment. I think it's really interesting the fact that the statues come to life, and I just kind of like think about like mythology and how like a lot of mythology talks about how people turn into other things, like metamorphosize into like flowers, or trees, or stone objects. You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting like that kind of reversal of like bringing the statue to life. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you for that, for sharing that. And the kind of the statement was, in a lot of stories and mythologies, it's people turning into other things. So people turning into, I guess, stone in the Medusa mythology, or flowers, or other animals. And so for a statue to become human was something that struck out, that stood out to you. Yeah. It's just, yeah, Renee.
So I'm not done with the book, but I've started reading, and I think it's interesting that some of the statues are, you know, as you read in your excerpt, like Saint Genevieve is clearly not, she doesn't feel like Saint Genevieve, even though like that's who her statue is. And some others kind of take on some of that personality trait. I'm just curious if you want to talk about like how you decided on how to give them the personality when they like have a name, even though they're not that thing.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for that question. And that was in some of the characters, the statues realize and recognize that they were carved to represent certain saints or angels or other biblical figures. And then there are others who really do believe that they are the embodiment of that character. And I just think that was, I made those decisions based on just what I observe about, people. Some of us, wow, that sounds bad. Like, I feel like everyone here, it's very much their own individual and is carving out their own path and wants to claim their own agency. And, and I think, and sometimes, we've experienced challenges, or I've faced this too, of like, well, what was expected of me? And like, do I need to pursue this path that was expected of me? So there's some tension there of who am I for myself? And then should I be the thing that other people want me to be? And then you have some people, some statues who are going to take advantage of what people believe that they are and believe in this expressions of power and say, well, I was carved to look like this, and so you should just trust me because this is who I was carved to represent. And, there are cult leaders, as we know. We got time for one more question. Yay, Sasha.
Can you talk about what drew you to the medieval period and specifically to the plague? Like, did you have a fascination with it before this book?
Thank you so much. The question was, what drew me to the medieval age, and then what drew me to the plague? All right, so when I first started this book, just to kind of backtrack, I really consider myself kind of a place-based writer. It's usually the setting that will come to me first, and then I kind of write into that setting and play around, and then the story will sort of materialize from there. And it was the Notre Dame that came to me as setting, and then the characters of the statues, just because I was so curious what was going on behind those eyes. And I didn't really know when to set it at first. At first, it was going to take place around the time of the Renaissance, and they were going to be pushing back on what's happening in society. Are people still going to want to believe in us? And there was some tension there, but I realized it was not enough. And so just doing more research about the cathedral, I thought, well, what if it took place during the bubonic plague? That would up the stakes more. That would create more tension. If these statues are coming to life or wanting to be human, then that a plague, a pandemic is going to be a real threat to their mortality. So for me, it was something that boosted the stakes, and I wrote into that. And it took a lot of research. And again, I really wish this podcast existed because it's amazing. So,
Thank you.
And again, that's the Dead Reckoning podcast, so plug for that. And then Tara's The City of Dancing Gargoyles, and you have, how many books do you have? You have so many.
This is 6.
Yes.
But some of them are little chaps, so don't.
And poems. You have books of poems, short stories, you do everything. Yeah, Tara does everything. Yeah. All right, so I think that's it, yeah. Thank you again, thank you so much for being here.
Can we give one more hand for Lauren C. Johnson, Tara Campbell, Beth Winegarner? Thank you for making this so special this evening. Thank you all for making it so special. I'll be brief and just let you know that we have books by our authors at the front register. You can find them here. Please do not ask me at this back desk if you can buy a book there, because you will be punished. Front register. I'm feeling catty because we're like at prom, so it's fine. Front register, you can find books there. Our authors will be signing them back here, so find them there, bring them back here. Y'all did a really great job of polishing off those bottles, so well done. Way to go, party people. We still have a couple of gargoyle-inspired cocktails for the evening, goth prom-inspired cocktails for the evening. So take advantage of that. Please take a look around. If you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thank you so much, and let's give our authors one more hand.